Among several key swing states, evidence of supposed glitches in vote-counting software have emerged following the election and in recent days. The Trump campaign and other right-wing groups speculate these glitches transferred votes meant for President Trump over to Democrat nominee Joe Biden. Major media outlets reported that these allegations are false. On CNN, officials from Wisconsin and Michigan said they do not believe anything wrong occurred in their state's elections.
What we've got to talk about really is to leave the conspiracy theories behind.
This election was smooth, secure, transparent, and accurate.
Fluctuations in the voting numbers reported on election night can indicate otherwise. According to a Twitter post from a data scientist, Michigan counted almost 150,000 votes within 5 seconds, and less than 6,000 of them were for Trump. And Virginia's vote count was reduced by over 100,000 votes in the early hours of the morning. The data scientist also told us she found Wisconsin had an average count of 325 votes per second, while Washington hit a peak of over 130,000 vote counts per second. And in one video, what looks to be CNN's 2020 election coverage showed 20,000 votes in Pennsylvania being transferred from Trump to Biden. Other reported glitches have caused separate issues. Wisconsin election workers had to duplicate over 13,000 ballots because of a printing error, which meant every ballot had to be opened and read.
The state of Michigan may have more registered voters in the 2020 election than its voting age population. That's as an analysis shows more than 10,000 deceased people have cast ballots in the state.
The state of Michigan is showing an incredibly high voter registration rate. That's according to calculations based on census and state voting data. The state's population is about 9.9 million as of July last year. An estimation of its 2020 population by World Population Review is just over 10 million. Census data shows that the state has just under 80% of its population over the age of 18. Unless the state's age group changed dramatically in less than a year, its voting age population should be around 7.8 million. But according to the state's Voter Information Center, there are over 8.1 million registered voters in the 2020 election. That makes the state's voter registration rate over 100%, indicating that there are about 240,000 more registered voters than the state's voting population. That hasn't taken into account that some of the population are immigrants who haven't been naturalized into U.S. citizens. And this may not be a single case. A research by government watchdog Judicial Watch alleges that 353 U.S. counties in 29 states have their voter registration rates exceeding 100%. That's about 1.8 million more registered voters than eligible voting citizens. The study collected the most recent registration data posted online by the states themselves. Meanwhile, more than 10,000 people confirmed or suspected dead have returned their mail-in ballots to vote in Michigan. That's according to analysis of state election data. The analysis was provided by Big Data Poll to NTD's sister media, The Epoch Times. It shows that about 9,500 voters confirmed dead through the Social Security Death Index are marked in the state's mail voting database as having returned ballots. In addition, another nearly 2,000 are 100 years old or more and aren't listed as known living centenarians. The data indicates that somebody else was trying to vote on behalf of these people. Michigan Secretary of State spokesperson told the Epoch Times that ballots of voters who have died are rejected in Michigan, even if the voter cast an absentee ballot and then died before Election Day. But the director of Big Data Poll, Richard Barris, is not convinced, saying that while he is open to the idea that some were rejected, he is not open to any outright dismissal they were all rejected. Democratic nominee Joe Biden leads in Michigan by less than 150,000 votes. The Trump campaign filed a lawsuit in the state to halt vote counting until Republican observers are granted adequate access. Michigan's GOP-led legislature is investigating allegations of election irregularities. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
A new report sheds light on China's financial situation. It shows that hundreds of million-dollar Chinese companies are in severe debt and filing for bankruptcy. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has more on those numbers.
First, we turn to China's economy. The Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, virus pandemic has severely affected hundreds of large Chinese enterprises. That's based on a report by the Chinese Central Bank. Nearly 600 are facing financial troubles. About 3/4 of them are in severe levels of debt or have applied for bankruptcy. These are companies that have assets valued over $60 million. This, according to the Central Bank of China's Financial Stability Report released on Friday. It says the financial troubles concern about $600 billion of assets between the companies, adding that $90 billion of it are non-performing assets. That means it's money lent to a third party, and that has little chance of being paid back. Enterprises that are in trouble include the sales, transportation, and manufacturing industries.
And Pompeo says the Chinese Communist Party is the world's #1 threat to freedom. He spoke about American principles at the launch of the Ronald Reagan Institute Center for Freedom and Democracy earlier today.
Secretary Pompeo spoke about the importance of freedom and democracy, calling the Chinese Communist Party authoritarian, brutish, and antithetical to human dignity and freedom. Pompeo said the CCP was the central challenge the Trump administration and America would face in the years ahead.
Every place that human freedom wants to flourish, the Chinese Communist Party is resisting it. And so each time we have a conversation at every level between the United States and China, we raise these issues.
Pompeo said he was confident the U.S. would overcome these problems and went on to say that he made sure all U.S. ambassadors would have China-related issues as a top priority.
My ambassadors, no matter where they are in the world, have China at the top of their list. So if you're an ambassador in the Democratic Republic of Congo or in South Korea, you know that the Chinese Communist Party is intent on impacting that country, and we are determined to make sure that we use our capacity to push back against that challenge.
Pompeo made clear that the U.S. required accountability, transparency, and reciprocity from China, going on to say that the party's atrocities in Xinjiang, Tibet, and elsewhere will not be tolerated.
No more illegal claims in the South China Sea. No more coercion and co-optation of American businesses. No more consulates used as dens of spies. No more stealing of intellectual property. And no more ignoring fundamental human rights violations.
Secretary Pompeo said this stance against the CCP required diplomatic as well as militaristic efforts, which is one of the reasons why the Trump administration made historic investments to enhance American armed forces. He also said the administration is continuing to strengthen international institutions like NATO to wake them up to the threat posed by the Marxist-Leninist CCP. Referencing Reagan, the Secretary of State said the innate desire for freedom, for personal autonomy, for human dignity rests in the souls of each of us. Pompeo said he put together the U.S. Commission on Inalienable Rights, which attempted to reground American foreign policy in these fundamental understandings about human dignity. He said policies must be grounded in a love of America, which will see America as a leader and its allies and the U.S. emerge stronger and freer. He emphasized that the promise of America's freedom does not pit oppressors against the oppressed or focus on materialism. According to him, American freedom is the reality that all men and women are made in the image of God, with certain inherent God-given rights just by the virtue of our humanity. Christina Kim, NTD News.